Hello and welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week through news and headlines ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I'm Daniel, and your other host this week is Matt. Welcome back, Matt.
Thanks for having me. It's been a while. Life.
Yeah, I think you had to skip out on once in the rotation, didn't you?
I did. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we will definitely cover it in the Brokehead block, but first, if this is your very first episode of the show, the way we do format it is we go through this week's news first, and then we end it with the Brokehead block, which is the more personal side of the show, what Matt and I have been up to since you last heard us. So let's jump right in and explore sector number 560. Starting off with some Nintendo news, as they have confirmed that it plans to produce more movies based on its video games following the success of the recent Super Mario Bros. Movie in collaboration with Illumination. I know we've been covering this movie for the last couple of weeks, and there's been rumors of crossovers happening, but now this is the first time that Nintendo has actually come out and confirmed future plans. Nintendo had previously steered clear of Hollywood adaptations after the failure of the original Mario movie in the 1990s. However, the success of the new film has led to speculation about possible adaptations of other franchises such as The Legend of Zelda. So Nintendo legend Shigeru Miyamoto has stated that he has, quote, no doubt, end quote, that there will be more Nintendo films in the future, although it is not clear whether these will all be with Illumination or whether live-action adaptations will be considered. I posted this, Matt, up on a video game group on Nintendo on Facebook, and they were like, well, no doubt doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean he's confirming anything. I really don't know how black and white you need this. I mean, it's about to make $1 billion. This is Nintendo saying there's more coming.
Yeah, I don't think anyone really expected it to blow up as big as it did, and that's without like China really chipping any much in the box office. Like, well, the last decade or so, China's been a big presence at the in the box office, and it's been like basically a bomb in China. But outside of China, it's been some blockbuster business. Anyone I know that's seen it has loved it, and it had like the biggest non Marvel opening weekend of like the last year.
Yeah, it's done extremely well. Obviously, we've had things like Top Gun and Avatar and all that stuff too. But I again, this is yet another notch in the belt of people are ready to go out. They've been watching movies. They've been going to theaters. This excuse of people don't like going to the theaters is done. People are willing to go out to watch these blockbuster or even sequels to things like Avatar or Top Gun.
Well, you also had
happened in years.
You also had like a lot of nostalgia with Mario, and you had the pedigree of Illumination, which the Minion and the Despicable Me and Minion movies are a bunch of fun. I enjoy them.
They did an incredible job with the animation. That's something I talked about a couple of weeks ago, that if anything, the animation was perfect. I could not find any flaws in it. And I'm not an animator or anything, but there's some movies where you can tell it's a little rough. And in this case, they really polished this fucking movie, and it's gorgeous to look at. Setting aside any plot problems or character voices, whatever, it's a gorgeous movie to see. And it gets me excited to kind of speculate as to how a Legend of Zelda would be handled by Illumination or Metroid or other franchises. And I think it'll be within this year that they will announce that inevitable Super Mario Bros. 2, plus whatever next franchise they decide to bring out on the big screen. And given some of this popularity for the gaming, the movies, the nostalgia, as you were saying, data from the American Social Security Administration shows a rise in baby names inspired by Nintendo characters in 2022, with some children being named Pikachu, Bowser, and Link. So Organic Baby Formula has compiled a list of the number of babies per million named after each Nintendo character, the most popular being Mario and Zelda, although you could argue that those are regular names anyway, so I'm willing to put those aside if needed. But Pikachu, Bowser, that's pretty hilarious. While the surge of Nintendo-themed baby names could be attributed to millennials reaching parenting age and the continued growth of the company, Its family-friendly image may also be a factor. The success of the new Super Mario Bros. Movie is further evidence of Nintendo's popularity, leading to the possibility of another year of record Nintendo baby naming. It's got to be millennials. That's what
I mean,
is.
that, and you've got Gen Zers that are starting to make families. But I mean, I'm sure it's like there's some Gen X approval as well. The generation that grew up with those characters initially. It reminds me of when Game of Thrones was at its peak, and you had people naming their kids Khaleesi.
Yep.
And boy, that I'm sure that's not aged well at this point.
I had a coworker whose niece was named Khaleesi before the final season, and I was like, "Oh man!" And I know the parents did not like the change of that final season.
It's like naming your kid Darth Vader. Some of those names are not going to age well, like Mario. I mean, that's a classic Italian name, and there's plenty of Mario. Like that one's not going to seem too unusual. Zelda's that was a name that predates Legend of Zelda, so it's a little unusual. I think the ones they're going to get like the flack or be made fun of are the ones named Bowser.
Yeah, I think the Nintendo president is actually named. The last name is Bowser. I've seen the last name be pretty common, but never a first name.
I mean, if you're ever questioning whether it's going to be, if your kid's name could be made fun of, like make it the middle name.
Yeah, and I can't speak to it because we named Leonardo after the turtle, not the artist or the old name. We named it specifically after the turtle, and we gave him the middle name of Grayson after Dick Grayson. So I'm no better. I'm just not naming him.
But like that. Those are names that I mean, I've got a cousin whose husband's name is Grayson. So it's and it has nothing to do with Robin at all. So I mean, that's a name that has been in circulation, is not as widely used, and Leonardo goes by Leo. So it's a short nickname. Whatever the genesis of that was. Now, please no correlation to Sega Genesis. It's a fun story. It's just when the names like really sound out there is where it's like you're kind of leaving your kid. It's almost child in some of these names.
A little bit, yeah, like Ganondorf, Captain Falcon, Mewtwo, all of that shit. It's like, oh man, what are you doing? They're gonna change your name, and they're gonna grow up hating those characters when you do that. I think when they get made fun of, like Pikachu. Yeah. I mean, they'll be like, "Fuck that! I'm changing my name as soon as I'm 18." Oh, yeah.
Or they'll evolve.
I'm now Raichu. Well, speaking of the turtles that Leonardo was named after, IDW and Dark Horse Comics are teaming up for a crossover limited series, TMNT Cross Stranger Things, which brings together the classic TMNT with the kids of Stranger Things. So the 4-issue story follows the kids from Hawkins as they take a trip to New York City and run into the TMNT and the Upside Down. The crossover brings together two iconic franchises that are, of course, linked to the 80s and 90s pop culture. It seems like the obvious two things to put together because they fit in that, again, pop culture of 80s and 90s. But this is not a crossover I saw coming. As often as TMNT has crossed over with everyone, Power Rangers, Batman, Stranger Things is not one I expected.
Initially, any weird like cross-company crossover, cross-media crossover, you kind of turn your head a little bit because it's just for that story. It's kitschy, but like you got to have a good story behind it. And initially, I turned my head, but I'm like, they both had like the Turtles' origin was in the 80s. Like the first comic books came out in the late 80s, and they were gritty. And I think if you went with a little bit older Stranger Things kids, like I think weirdly enough, it does lend itself. And the Turtles did do some dimension hopping when they came across the race that Krang comes from. So I think it'd be fun.
And I hope it does well because Stranger Things fans are pretty rabid. They're there to buy D&D merchandise, at least from the years I worked at the comic shop. They do get into this. They do support it financially. The Funko Pops I know were pretty big. And the show wrapped up though, didn't it? It's pretty much a done deal.
No, they've got one more season, but it's not coming out until 2024.
Okay,
and they're also doing like there've also been rumors of a animated series that they're going to be spinning off, and another series or two they're going to be spinning off of the Stranger Things. So like the main story that, that I've followed, like the kids in 11, that story wraps up, with the fifth and final season. But I mean, that universe is not shutting down by any stretch.
Well, good on Dark Horse and IDW. Although, as much I love IDW, they make great comic books like TMNT, Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm a big collector of Sonic the Hedgehog. I know Scott, another host on here, he collects all the covers to Sonic, Treasure Hunting Sonic. He's been on. IDW is in trouble, though, as IDW Media Holdings, the parent company of IDW Publishing and IDW Entertainment, has announced that it is cutting 39% of its workforce and voluntarily delisting from the New York Stock Exchange. So the restructuring plan aims to position the company for recovery and future growth. Additionally, the company's CEO and CFO are leaving, and their positions will be replaced by Davide Jonas, IDW's executive chairman and vice chairman of the board of executives. So the decision to delist is being presented as a cost-saving exercise that will allow management and employees to focus on managing the company's businesses, strengthening strategics, relationships, future long-term growth. It's all stuff that you tell your stockholders that may have lost out on a shit ton of money. But this really hurts my heart because I think they are one of the better publishers out there, just like Image, Boom Studios, Dark Horse. The indie scene is pretty big, and they have some strong franchises. And I don't know if this means that they're in danger of shutting down their publishing, but this will affect the comic books in one way. I mean, when you lay off that many people, I don't know exactly what division they're laying off, but IDW Publishing, I'm sure, will be affected.
I mean, it's got shades of Marvel Comics 1996. Anytime any company like slashes almost half their workforce, that is not a good sign, even for recovery. It's taken themselves, down to a small publisher again. I didn't even know they were listed. If I knew they were listed, I would have. I definitely would not have bought, but I would have cringed the second someone, if I had been in that room and someone said, "Yeah, let's list it," because once you list, you're beholden to stockholders, you're not beholden to the people who, to the consumers. So you're trying to just churn out product, and you have to show year-over-year growth because, the people who are buying your stock are not the people who read your books,
right?
Typically. And I'm shocked that a company that is very highly reliant on licensed properties would go and even list themselves publicly, because like they're at the whim of whoever they're licensing from. And what if a licensor doesn't want to renew that license? What if Bandai says like, nope, we're taking Mighty Morphin Power Rangers back? You see how many comics they put out with that label on there? It's a dicey move. I hope they recover, because I know that as far as like indie publisher, or like that it challenges the big two, it's kind of gone back and forth between Image and IDW over the last 15, 20 years. I hope for publishing's sake that they are able to recover, because variety is the spice of life. So variety is the spice of comic books.
I do also think it was a poor decision, unless IDW was planning on truly bringing out and branching into other media, such as IDW Presents, and then putting out shows and films, and which all take a ton of money, and I would not expect them to do. But if, let's say, that they were in that position, then it would make a little more sense to maybe branch out and become public, go out and bring stocks in, because now you're a media company. And not to say they're not anymore, but by staying in publishing, and I know they do some board game publishing as well, I don't think they're going to attract a lot of big buyers. And I do think it is a good move that they have backed up from the New York Stock Exchange. And hopefully that does put all of the pressure off of trying to, as you were saying, show growth or show results every single quarter, or else your stock goes down. And that's when people get fired. I mean, we saw that happen with any major company, Warner Brothers, Disney especially. So with them cut out of that equation, hopefully that will result in a positive thing, but that won't be for a few years down the line, unfortunately.
Yeah, their recovery is going to be at least a good 5-10 years from delisting. So, I mean, hopefully they'll be able to recover quickly, but yeah, hopefully they'll be a little bit wiser about trying to relist or go public again. I personally come up with some original IP, make yourself really attractive, to a media company that wants IP and get bought by something like that. Like Marvel hurt themselves by going when they went public or to and started selling stock. It wasn't until it took them years to recover, and they had to leverage a lot of their properties in order to gain solvency again, and then become attractive to raise funding for making their movies. And then they got swallowed up by Disney. So, like, if you want to list yourself in the stock exchange, make yourself attractive to a larger media company and then get bought up by them.
I'm rooting for you, IDW, and all the other indie publishers as well, and I will continue to buy in. One of the big two, Marvel, has announced that its digital comic app run by Comixology will be shutting down on June 7th. So readers will still be able to purchase new releases through May 2nd before the purchasing feature is shut down. Marvel has also stated that digital comic purchases made before May 2nd on the Marvel Comics app will be available and accessible on the Marvel Unlimited app. Android users won't need to do anything to make sure their purchases are added to Marvel Unlimited. Those using the apps on iOS devices, though, will need to create a Marvel account to sync their purchases before June 2nd, or they risk losing them. New releases can still be purchased through Amazon to use on its new Kindle app, so that's not the end of digital comics, but it's one less thing on the Marvel side especially. But I've got to tell you, Marvel readers that strictly read digitally got lucky on this one, that they're able to sync it up, if they do what they're supposed to, over to Marvel Unlimited, because this could have easily been, and as I've seen in digital movies, some of these apps get shut down and you lose your digital purchases. You don't always have the luxury of, here's a heads up, make sure you back these comics up on this service, or make sure you download these movies. That doesn't always happen.
I was shocked to see that Comixology still existed.
They're like almost gone. They shut down so much. I think there were also ones that fired like 80% of their staff.
I mean, I was out once, like Amazon bought them. Like I don't have a house. I lease an apartment in the lifestyle, like where I basically have to move every 2 or 3 years. So when digital comics, came out, that was great, because that means I didn't have to like move big long boxes of comics anymore. I could sell those, buy comics digitally. And do I prefer the paper experience? Absolutely. So, but when Comixology came out, I'm like, if I want to read something monthly, I'm buying my comics digitally. If I want to read, a big thick collection, then I'll buy trades. I don't really buy like floppies anymore. And it was so easy to do. Like what you had partnerships with stores where if you just wanted to go to like a stores page, like you could buy digitally, go through their portal to Comixology, and they would get a piece of that. And you could still support local stores that way, or you could buy directly through the Comixology app. And then Amazon bought Comixology, and Apple was like, well, we aren't getting, we got to get our cut. And Amazon said, no, we're just going to take it in house. You got to go to Amazon, buy it, and then load it, sync it with your iPad. It became a much less streamlined, much more frustrating experience. And like, well, that's fine. I'll just go back to buying trades if and when I want to, read a comic book. You're seeing that I'm like, it's the death of technology. It's just gonna, like I said, I was shocked that it was still around. I liked it when it was at its peak, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I don't feel too bad about this one, but this is coming from a guy who still buys floppies, who buys trade paperbacks. I read some manga digitally. I don't know if that counts as comic books. I guess it does.
Sure.
But that's not stuff that comes out as a floppy, that comes out monthly, that kind of deal. I'm not used to reading it in that format. Manga, for some reason, I can do manga. Maybe it's because it's black and white and it's not in color. I don't know what it is about manga. It's just the line art makes it fine for me to read on a little screen. With comic books, though, I've tried it several times and I can't get into it. I still got to do the paper and ink, and I really appreciate it when the publishers, like we were just talking to Dan DiDio, Frank Miller Presents, when they prioritize the floppy instead of just making it for digital. So these, especially then,
absolutely.
Yeah, it makes the reading experience that much better for someone like me. And I will say that I'm grateful that I did not go the Comixology route up until this point because of this very issue. I can still dig up my comics. I can resell them. I can trade them in. I can give them away to someone. I can reread them. I can do all kinds of stuff with them. I can get them graded and then try to resell it on eBay. I mean, there's a lot of options that comes with physical. Obviously, space is an issue, but I have this process of I have X amount of long boxes. When it gets to that amount, I go through all my comic books, pull out what I'm willing to part with at that time, and then I use that as store credit or sometimes as cash, and then I turn around and buy more comics. So I've got my little process, and I think I'm always going to be a physical reader. If I ever stop reading physically, I won't be a digital reader. Maybe manga just will be the last bit of it, but that won't happen. So this one doesn't affect me too much, and it just makes me glad I've been still reading physically personally.
If my wife and I ever get in a situation or a place where we're buying a house, that's probably when I'll go back to, getting the occasional floppy. But until that day, I'm a trade paperback guy.
It's a good way to go, especially with the state of the big two right now, where the comics aren't really, they're not hot, man. They're not sexy. They're not appealing.
Nothing's really grabbing me. Like, even when I'm reading the news, like, I'm not reading anything. It's like, oh, I need to go get that. Like, I'm still confused by what this Dawn of DC thing is.
Yes. Yeah, they're not clear with they don't have a direct, neither company does, Marvel or DC. They don't have a clear vision as to where the comics are heading. They're like, oh, we have the Blue Beetle coming out. Let's put out a Blue Beetle comic. Yep. Yeah. All right. What's next? Oh, we got that.
They're now like they're becoming slaves to the movies rather than inspiring the movies.
Exactly right. We have two big Marvel comics now, and I hope that changes. I don't know if it will, but I do hope so. If anything, maybe when superhero movies aren't the action movies of today or kind of go away, whatever it is, if comics make it through that, I hope that they're able to focus again on trying to inspire tomorrow's media. It's going to be tough, though, being owned by Disney and being owned by Warner Brothers Discovery, soon Comcast probably. So I don't know, man. That might be it. We'll see what happens. And we'll definitely cover it here on the show. But we do have the future of Marvel cinema, at least, as at CinemaCon 2023, actor Aaron Taylor Johnson introduced the first footage of Sony's upcoming Marvel film, Kraven the Hunter, and they confirmed that it will be rated R, a first for Sony's Marvel movies. I like Sony's Marvel movies, so this gets me excited here. The footage reportedly shows Kraven killing poachers in a gruesome manner, including biting one man and spitting out his skin. The teaser also revealed the appearance of a major Spider-Man villain, the Rhino, played by Alessandro Nivola from Face Off. He played Pollux Troy. That's what I know him from, at least.
So real weird casting there.
Kraven the Hunter is set to release on October 6th and joins a slate of upcoming Spider-Man universe movies, including Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Venom 3, and Madam Web.
I'm interested to see Aaron Taylor Johnson, but everything I've heard about how much they're changing Kraven the Hunter for the movies got me cautiously, or get a lot of serious side eye. Like, he's gone from an actual poacher, a hunter, to okay, he hunts man now. People who hurt animals, they're making him almost the environmentalist route.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm interested, especially with they're allowing it to go darker, go to that R-rated route, and I seriously hope they get to do the Last Hunt storyline, eventually cross over with a version of Spider-Man and get to do that, because that story was seriously haunting, especially when 40-year-old spoilers where he captures Spider-Man and buries him alive.
Yes, and it has that iconic cover of him coming out of the grave, right?
Yeah.
Black Suit Spidey.
Yeah. And well, then you could have Venom involved too there, I guess. So maybe he goes and his last hunt is with Venom. I'm interested, but I'm to me, the Sony verse movies have been very hit or miss for me.
See, and that's why I'm excited for this, because I liked Morbius. I liked the Venom movies, except for Venom 2. I didn't like that one. I did like the first one. And of course, the Tobey Maguire films were awesome. Spider-Verse has been great. So they've got more hits than misses on my end. So I'm excited to go see this on day one. Across the Spider-Verse, I can't wait. Leo says he doesn't want to go see it, but if he doesn't want to go see it, I'll go see it without him. I'll check out Venom 3. Same with Madam Web.
It looks so good.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm sure that Kraven will have an appearance of someone. Like we saw Michael Keaton showed up in Morbius at the very end. So there's going to be a little cross pollination there between some of these characters. I hope Venom shows up, or Morbius, or someone to meet up with Craven. And I get what you're saying with the environmental. It's a very 2023 movie, right? Where some executive somewhere went, we can't have him killing animals. We can't have a poacher be the hero. We got to change that.
Unless the animal he's killing is a rhino.
Or man.
I mean, you can hear like the movie trailer guide, epic movie trailer guide saying that, he can't hunt animals. He can't hunt man, but he can hunt animal men. I am interested to see like how they're going to handle the rhino, because like I wasn't a big fan of like the big mech suit rhino from like that Paul Giamatti did. Like I liked his take on of the guy pre-rhino suit. God, I can't remember the character's name now. But you know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping that they do a more traditional comic rhino where it's like he has like that really thick skin and almost Hulk-like body.
I hope this means the trailer is coming out soon, within the next month, because I want to talk about it. I want to see it. And the R rating I don't think is going to be a problem, because they're not concerned with, we need to get in the PG-13 crowd or whomever. I think they're more like, let's try to make the movie we want to make. And if it involves a guy that hunts people, let's not do the off-screen kills or anything like that. Let's have them, as they were saying, biting people's skin and spitting it out and shit like that. So let's see it happen. And if it's a big success for them, then maybe they'll give another R-rating movie a try. I just want it to be whatever the storyteller wants it to be. If they push for an R rating, then let's see it. Even Morbius could have easily been an R rating too. On the other side of the aisle, though, Warner Brothers at CinemaCon 2023 confirmed that they are working on Beetlejuice 2, with the title card shown during a presentation alongside the new Conjuring film title, The Conjuring: Last Rites. The Conjuring franchise has grossed over $2 billion at the box office, and footage from The Nun 2 was also shown. While rumors have been circulating about a Beetlejuice sequel, this may be the first public acknowledgement of that project being in development. I don't know if they confirmed that Michael Keaton is definitely going to be Beetlejuice. I'm sure he will be, though, right? There's no way they recast.
Do they have an out to do that? Yes, because like he's a ghost, he can change form. But I think I've read comments and interviews where Michael Keaton would be open to doing it again. Like that was like his big, one of his big hits before he did Batman. In fact, I think it was the last big thing he did before he was Batman. So we're kind of like in a Keaton renaissance for the moment. So I mean, if they do it, cool. Even though they've now like publicly acknowledged that they're developing a sequel, like I'll believe it when film actually starts to roll on it, because they've been teasing and people have been putting out like fake posters or whatever for well over a decade, almost 2 decades now. So like once film actually starts to roll, I'll believe that it's happening. But it's things where like, do we need a sequel? Like, it's kind of a perfect movie on its own.
Well, I mean, it could always be argued, do we need any sequel? Do we need any movie at all? I mean, the answer is...
Fair point.
The answer is if Beetlejuice 2 makes money, then yes, we did need it. But if it flops, then no, we did not need a sequel. Mm-hmm. Before I move on from CinemaCon, because I have not covered all of... This is literally it for CinemaCon. I purposefully left off the Flush stuff, but I know you're a little bit more...
I was like, I know what you're skipping.
And I had a feeling I'm like, maybe Matt wants to talk about it. So here's your chance. Was there anything as far as DC that you wanted to talk about when it came to CinemaCon?
I mean, I'm looking forward to Blue Beetle. I don't know that what I've seen rises to the level of like, this should be theatrically released. I know it was originally being developed for streaming and then they decided to go, but I like that we're getting more diverse characters out there. As far as like the Flash goes, like it's such a fucking quagmire right now, because I want more Michael Keaton. I want to see what they do, with the movie. I'm interested in see how they're trying to bridge what came, like the Zack Snyder stuff to what's going into with the James Gunn stuff. And they've really been trying to really push this movie. And Ezra Miller seems to have, or at least he's like listening to, or they're successfully keeping him out of trouble, at least the last few months now, until hopefully the movie comes out. So I know my wife and I have conversations whether we're going to see it in the theater because of the Ezra Miller aspect, and or just wait till it comes out on streaming and someone has it on a Plex server somewhere. Well, I don't know. Like I'm very torn because I want to see this movie, but it's a moral quagmire, so to speak. But we'll see what happens. It's Ben Affleck's last outing as Batman, and he claims that he finally was finally like 100% happy with his portrayal, and I'm interested to see what they do with Keaton as an aged Batman. I don't know. It'll be a game time decision, I believe.
Kind of playing a little devil's advocate and assuming that I were going to go see this and I were excited for the Flash. Even if I were going to see it, I don't even know if there's a way to win on this one, because they've already altered this final movie, this final cut of it to based on what it was. And I'm not even talking about the original Snyderverse actual Flash film that was going to reboot the universe into once Zack was done telling his story, where Cyborg was still involved. I'm talking about the cut that made it extremely blatantly honest or clear that they were erasing the Snyderverse, that Keaton's Batman and Affleck's Batman get into it, and it results in the death of Batman. When Zaslav was taking over, that was the idea of when he took over, he was like, we're not killing off Batfleck. Instead, he ends up in the Speed Force, which is the original death. He gets sucked into it. And at the end, post-credits, you hear, like in the television, like in Man of Steel, remember when the Kryptonians were like, you are not alone? Well, you get something similar to that mixed in with a BVS, the Flash communicating with Bruce, and it's Bruce saying, find me, Barry. And that would have been the post-credit scene. This is when they were still planning on keeping Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill, Gal Gadot, pre-James Gunn. Now that James Gunn is in there and he wants to make his own versions of all these characters, that's all out of the film. I'm not going to go into plot because I know you want to see it, but as far as the plot of this final cut from the screen, because they screened it at CinemaCon, it's all on Twitter, the whole synopsis, and it's been very, it's very simple now. It's just cut out out of any complication. So if I were a Flash fan going to see this, I'd be like, man, I'm not even going to get that version that they were working on anymore. So it literally is a clean cut of like, well, we're not going to do anything more with these characters, and James Gunn's is our next, so I guess we have to release this still.
I mean, they spent over $200 million on it. It's a hard thing to just write off and never release when so much of it has already been out there. Zaslav also didn't. I mean, this thing was mostly done when the merger was complete, and so it's either he takes a $200 million or $300 million loss on this movie, and hurts the bottom line even more. Whereas like he probably saw that he had a better chance of recouping some of that money with this movie than he would if you had released Batgirl. I mean, they already took a big hit with Shazam.
Oh yeah, and Black Adam too.
With that sequel. Yep, and Black Adam. So anything that I think that costs more than $75 million, they've got to throw it out there, because they'll at least get some of that money back through like licensing on streaming other services or cable deals or whatnot. And I feel like that of all the projects that were in the wings waiting to be released, this one, Aquaman 2, probably have the best chance of success. But I'm already hearing that Aquaman 2 is a mess. That it's not testing well, and there's questions on how much could be saved before that's released.
That was another one. They cut out Ben Affleck's cameo in Aquaman 2 because they don't plan on using him anymore. So it's also going through some tweaks because of the James Gunn reboot. One of the things that was put up on the wrap, and I didn't include it on here, and I probably should have, but since we're talking about CinemaCon and the future of Warner Brothers Discovery, is that Warner Brothers Discovery is blaming James Gunn's rebooted universe. Whether or not it was his decision to reveal the first couple of films at the time that he did, I don't know. But they are saying that they're like, look, your universe is eating into potential profits of these current films. Because, and I've seen this sentiment a lot, especially on Facebook, where people are like, what's the point of seeing Blue Beetle, Aquaman 2, The Flash, if they're not in continuity, if they're not going to have sequels anyway? Why don't we just wait until those new movies come out? And I think there's some truth to that. I really do think that Warner Brothers or James Gunn, whomever, shot themselves in the foot by revealing this slate and saying that it's a complete reboot, because for a lot of people, that makes these films mean less. It's almost like when you get a one shot at the comic shop or an annual, it's like, well, do I really need to buy this to get the main story? That's kind of what that feels like.
There is, I mean, and I get that sentiment from the same standpoint though. Like if you looked at like the CW shows, the CW DC shows, when they started playing with the multiverse, and they were working their way into Crisis on Infinite Earths. They basically threw out there, and they had like winks and nods and cameos from basically every live action property that there's been across all media, and basically acknowledging that the multiverse exists. It's real. It's all out there. Whether it feeds into the current main storyline or not, like that's really what it comes down to. I know CW. I mean, they even had Ezra Miller's Flash, show up on in Crisis on Infinite Earth. So they were trying to acknowledge that like each of these things count. They're just in their own separate realities. Just from a business standpoint, when you had like the movie division kind of floundering with these releases, yeah, I mean, you got a CEO or two CEOs, co-CEOs, who they were announced to much fanfare, and they're constantly having to answer questions like, well, what do you plan on doing? What do you plan on doing? And they know they still have like a year's worth of releases to still come out. So it's like, it's a tough call. Do you like just keep telling people, yeah, there's a plan, and hold until all that stuff that was already in production before you were hired comes out before you reveal that plan? Or what's the case here? Like they reveal what that plan is, or well, some of what that plan is, and you don't really know if what's coming out, like what's gonna, play into it or not. I mean, basically it sounds like the movies, like the Snyder movies, were Earth 0, Earth 1. And now, with the Flash, it's resetting the timelines. You're going to have multiple Earths in there, multiple timelines. And that's like Jeff Johns' version of Crisis, where now we have new Earth, coming out of that. So it's, I don't know. It does raise a lot more questions. It is kind of murky. I think the idea of the multiverse would have been a lot easier to play with if there hadn't been a lot of controversy from the executives of Warner Brothers before messing around with Zack Snyder's vision. And what you and a lot of the Restore the Snyderverse people, were, angry, angling for, which was, let Netflix, like license to Netflix, or do something on HBO Max where Zack Snyder finishes out Just League 2 or 3 so we can finish out his storyline. Like if you do that, though, I can see this from the business aspect of like, you're kind of competing against yourself. It's all a very murky situation. It's all, I mean, for some people it's very cut and dry, and I get it. For me, I'm very torn, with, I'll take whatever I can get, but the like Black Adam was crap. I still haven't seen Shazam 2, and yeah, I do get that little sense of, well, what counts and what doesn't. Like I still love the Zack Snyder stuff, but how are they gonna like bridge the gap? Now that I know that Henry Cavill's not coming back and Ben Affleck is done. It's like it's all very, I don't know, conflicty or batty in the belfry.
And by the time this episode releases, we will know, I believe, the future of Zack Snyder's universe. And I will want to hear from Matt Stradamus after the end jingle. But let's finish off this last news story here from Amazon, as they have confirmed a 2-season order of Batman Caped Crusader, which is an all-new animated series from animation legend Bruce Timm. Along with this, Amazon also announced the acquisition of the animated holiday film Merry Little Batman and its spin-off series Bat Family. Merry Little Batman is a family action comedy, while Bat Family follows Batman, Alfred, and Damian Wayne, aka Little Batman, as they navigate the fun and frustrations of life as a superhero family. It sounds like HBO Max projects that Warner Brothers Discovery sold to Amazon to distribute. Like, we made it, it's done, but you want to give us a little bit of money to have this on your platform? Amazon said, sure, we'll take these 3, and that's the deal that's happening. And I'll tell you, Cape Crusader is the one I'm really excited for, simply because of Bruce Timm. I know Scott called
Heck
it
yeah.
a continuation of Batman the Animated Series on Discord. I know it is not. It's a prequel. It's a spiritual, not even a prequel. It's its own thing, but to me, this is as close as I'm going to get to more Batman the Animated Series, especially with the passing of Kevin Conroy. But we still have Bruce Timm out there. We still have a lot of great players and voice actors and animators. And I do hope that this has a similar quality to what we got with Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah, I mean, we really haven't seen anything from it, but just the bat ears alone on the cowl and the key art like shows you like, well, they're definitely going with, the 1939 style, Batman cowl. But I mean, Bruce Timm is attached to it, and there's no one who knows Batman and animation better than Bruce Timm. So I'm excited for it. Again, a weird move that, as part of the cost cutting measures, that Zaslav and HBO Max, soon to be Max, just let that go to a competitor.
It's a big get, and I hope Amazon paid some good money for it, because I do think that Cape Crusader has the potential to bring in some eyeballs. I know I have access to Amazon Prime. I'm not a buyer. I'm anti-Amazon. So if I want to see this, I do have access to it through my parents. And if anything, if eventually there's a Blu-ray or something, I wouldn't feel too bad about buying it. But I am going to go see it. I'm going to watch Cape Crusader. I'm going to find a way to watch it. And now hopefully I do enjoy it, and it's something that we can discuss here on the show. Did you ever see the Batman 75th animated short from Bruce Timm, in which it is basically this Batman with the long ears, purple gloves, guns, and everything?
No, where was that?
It's on YouTube now, but it has Bruce Timm coming back. I can't remember if Kevin Conroy voiced Batman. He has like one line in it, but it does take place in this era that this show is coming out in. And to me, I think that was the concept to what is Cape Crusader now, because it's older. It's not in black and white. It's in like brown and white or black or whatever you want to call it. There's a name for that.
Mm-hmm.
And
like sepia tone.
Yes, it's like a sepia Batman the Animated Series sort of. And I think that's what this is going to be. So if you haven't seen it, type in Bruce Timm Batman 75th short. It should pop up. It's still on YouTube in high definition and everything. Watch that, because that may be what Cape Crusader, a little taste of what Cape Crusader is going to be.
Oh, hell yeah. I'll look at that as soon as we're done here.
And that does wrap up our news for this week. Let's head into the final portion of today's show, the Brokehead Block, which is what Matt and I have been up to since you last heard us. What we've been watching, playing, reading, what's been making us broke. So kick it off, Matt. What have you been up to since you were last on?
Oh my God, so much stuff. My wife and I had our big wedding. I think we were just about to have that last time we talked. And that was a bunch of fun. But since then, life's been even busier. Like, we thought that we were going to get a little bit of a break after the big wedding happened. And now it's just been, I can't believe it. We're already about to hit May. But I've been to Virginia twice. Like, last time when I was supposed to be on here, my parents were in their health has not been great. My dad has not been home since he's either been in a hospital or a rehab facility since December 30th. And he just finally, like, my mom was also had some, health problems. So she's in a rehab facility right now. And they just were able to finally be in the same room together just in time for their anniversary on the 25th. They hadn't seen each other face to face, since December 30th, outside of like video chatting, whenever that was, available. So, like, I've had to make a couple emergency trips to Virginia, in that time. As far as like what's made me broke, going to Virginia twice in the last 6 weeks. But I did take time finally. My wife and I just took a relaxing day. We went to brunch and we went to Barnes and Noble and just looked for some books to read. Like I was talking about earlier about trades. Like, I hadn't really picked up a trade for myself just to read. And it's been a very, very long time. I'm kind of just haven't made the time or made room for it. But I picked up Doomsday Clock.
Oh, really?
I needed to. Yeah, I picked up that collection, and immediately, like after I bought it, I'm like, oh shit, we hate Jeff Johns now. But I re- I read it and I enjoyed it, but also Jeff Johns was really trying to, it was very much written by someone who was a big fan of Alan Moore. Definitely, he was trying very hard to have the voice of Alan Moore, and it definitely read like someone who was trying to write like they were Alan Moore, but aren't Alan Moore. But I mean,
I remember, yeah, Doomsday Clock reading it. Dan DiDio actually revealed that, not on our show, obviously, but on other podcasts, that even Doomsday Clock had to be changed because I don't know if you remember, but it wasn't coming out on time. They couldn't get that series out, and then changes, like they had to make Dark Knight's Metal happen because Doomsday Clock or whatever Jeff's plans were in the comics were not coming fast enough. So even Doomsday Clock, unfortunately, was changed. And I know that Dan also recently revealed that with remember his 5G plan that he was talking about? He revealed that Manhattan was actually the villain behind the whole 5G initiative as well. So there were even more plans. So when I read Doomsday Clock, it does feel like they just kind of shrunk everything back to, well, we're not going to go forward with this big plan and we're already behind. So let's just make a self-contained story.
And the self-contained story, when you get to the end of it, is very much like the way it ends was he influenced by the Watchmen series that HBO did, the one season? Because the ending of that was thematically very similar.
Yeah.
And that you have, spoiler warnings for anyone who's out there, but Manhattan eventually fades away in the comic, and to this successor that he passes on his power to, and in the HBO series passes on. Well, you're left thinking that you're about to witness someone who he's passed his power on to, and then it cuts to black just before you have confirmation on that. So, like, thematically, I don't know if he was influenced by that show or not, but it's too similar for there not to be any connection between the two. But I mean, I enjoyed it. Do I think I'll ever reread it? I honestly don't know. I felt like there were parts of it that were a little bit of a slog. I felt parts of it a little bit too stretched out. Again, it read very much like someone who was trying to write like Alan Moore, but is not Alan Moore.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like, Game of Thrones. When there's no book to adapt, to faithfully adapt like season 6, 7, or 8 to. So like you're trying to just write like George R.R. Martin would for those seasons, and you're definitely not doing what that person would have done. And then after that, God, what are we doing? We're getting ready to go on our long delayed honeymoon. We've already celebrated like our first anniversary, had our big wedding for all of our friends and family, and then we're finally going on our long delayed honeymoon / anniversary. We're going on a cruise next. By the time this drops, we'll be about 2 weeks out from going on our cruise to the Western Caribbean. I've never been on a cruise before, so
you're gonna love it.
I'm looking forward to just unplugging, and we're not getting internet, the Wi-Fi package on board. We're just both looking forward to just unplugging and just enjoying ourselves, enjoying each other, and not being on a schedule for a week.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations on being able to go on that. I love cruises. Kelly and I today we're just talking about when is the next time we get to go on a cruise, and it'll be a couple years down the line because of the little ones, and that's all right. But we're looking forward to that time, and I'm excited for you because I know how much fun it is.
I can't wait. I'm so excited. I mean, this year has been very, very up or down, very little in between. We're very excited though about that, and we just re-signed our lease, so we're staying at least where we're at for another year, so we don't have, and we actually extend a little bit, so we're not going to be moving around my wife's birthday in July this year or next year. So and that increase was a lot easier to swallow than the COVID adjustments that were present last year when every apartment complex was jumping their lease renewals by hundreds of dollars.
Well, a lot of changes, man, and I look forward to hearing when you come back eventually from your trips and what goes on in the next time you're on, because you always have some great major updates compared to some of us more day to day, kind of week to week people on my end.
Well, I mean, last time we talked, you only had a baby on the way. Now you've got a
That's true.
whole other baby. So how's that been?
Yeah, it's been, I've talked about it a little bit on here last week, and it's easier than when we had Leo because we're going, this is our second go around. We kind of know what to expect and we're going through the motions, right? But, it's still tough going through it. Just the lack of sleep or restless sleep, even. Kelly is about to, she's about to catch a cold or something because she woke up with a sore throat. So we're about to go through some of that. But, we're adjusting, taking it one day at a time. And as I was telling you off the air, Leo's been very excited and he's been a great big brother and a good helper. It's been on my end trying to juggle the kids and everything and time. It's been, of course, a little bit of a challenge, but I feel like I'm handling it a lot better than when we first had Leo. When that was a major life adjustment for me when we had Leo, because it's like, oh my God, like my time is definitely gone. Now it's like my time is gone, but it's not like I'm removing even more, twice the amount because of the baby, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah.
It's just like adding to it.
My wife's like one of her better friends, one of the people we were visiting while we were in Virginia this last time when we just got back at the beginning of the week. They had their first baby, and probably I think they've said they only want one child, but they had him not this past December, the year before that. So the last time last time we saw him, he was just a little baby, barely crawling, and now he's almost 1.5, and he's getting into everything. He has to reach it. Like whatever you think he can't reach, he can reach, or he'll find a way. He's getting very climby on chairs and stuff like that. I'm sure you remember with Leo, like trying to reach stuff on the counters and stuff like that. But we would, our friend John. So like when he had the baby, when he was his child was just a baby, and like in the little bassinet or whatever, he was like, see, my life hasn't changed. And he still gets to go out and do the stuff that he wants to do. And like, you realize you're like rocking your baby while we're like out day drinking at a bar in downtown Charlottesville, right? And so he would keep joking. So now, or he was being serious, but now it's like serious, he's settled in, and now he's joking about it. Like, see, my life hasn't changed. He's got baby proof and stuff all over the house, and he's had to change his outfit like 2 or 3 times because of things that his son is throwing around. So
right.
It's like your life changes in wild ways.
Only thing I have on my end otherwise is Kelly and I went to go see Air, which is Ben Affleck's latest film. He directed it, and he and Matt Damon also wrote it along with another screenwriter, although they weren't allowed to get writing credits on the film because of, I forget if it's like a SAG, I don't know what it is, SAG or something, but the fact that they were starring in it and one of them was directing it, they couldn't also write it was the problem. So they don't have any writing credits, but that's pretty known. And it's awesome, man. It's the story of Nike, how they were able to sign on Michael Jordan, and basically the rest was history, because at that time, Nike was not the big player in sports shoes. It was Adidas, and even Converse was ahead of Nike. And that's a little hard to imagine, but this movie outlines it really well. I will say, if you've seen Moneyball, if you love Moneyball, this is kind of like that. It's not as good as Moneyball. It tells a different story, and I think that Moneyball was a better made film, but Air was still excellent, and I would recommend it to any fans of sports in general or even Moneyball.
Yeah, my wife and I are interested in seeing that. We listened to Affleck was on. I don't know if you've heard of the Smartless podcast.
No,
and it's with Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and Sean Hayes. It was a podcast they started in the pandemic, and they're still going with it. In fact, like I think they have like a Netflix special that is coming out or just came out where they basically took their podcast on tour, but they made like a special on it. So like whenever we go on these trips up to Virginia, we're usually driving. We alternate between that and Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend.
Yep, I listen to that.
But like the Smartless podcast is hilarious. It's like 3 guys that are constantly like, the concept is one of them brings on a guest and the other 2 don't know who the guest is. So they're completely unprepared with questions for him. So it's kind of like a free flowing conversation with them. But Ben Affleck was on recently. And so he was talking a lot about Air and Batman and a bunch of other things. And it was like, it was really that was the other thing, like what I was talking about earlier about like my conflict with seeing the Flash, is that Affleck was like, you could hear in his voice, like he was he's like, I nailed it. I feel like I finally got Batman right in the whatever, like 5 minutes or whatever the movie he's in. But hearing him talk about that and Air and their whole concept for their shingle between Matt and him have with Artist Equity, I like their enthusiasm and that their goal of like, hey, we're not paying you a salary, but everyone gets a piece of this movie. If you invest in it, basically.
Well, that about does it, Matt, on my end especially. And Matt, I do want to thank you so much for being on. Before we close out with Matt Stradamus, please let them know where they can find you if they want to continue the conversation.
You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Madner or Instagram at Madner.com. That's spelled out DOTCOM.
Perfect. And to you on the other side, thank you so much for joining us as well this week. We do have some new merch up at our TeePublic. So if you head on over to thereasonsimbroke.com, click on merch, you will find a link to all of our t-shirts, mugs, and all kinds of great designs on there. So that's once again at thereasonsimbroke.com. Click on merch. I've been Daniel, joined by Matt this week, and Broke at Core, all will be well. So by the time this episode releases, we will have known, I think, the future of the Snyderverse. So I need to know now because it's not April 30th yet. Matt Stradamus, does it continue?
Does what continue?
The Snyderverse, Justice League 2 and 3.
The Snyderverse. Oh my God.
Don't eight-ball it. Don't say it's to be seen or ask again.
Outlook uncertain. Oh man, it's like I'm afraid, like I've had such a track record that now the pressure is building, and also I've been seriously. I've had a lot of stress, family stress lately. So my intent, I feel like, is a bit off. Not to say that there's excuses, there's explanations, but Justice League 2 and 3. I mean, Zack Snyder's been awfully vocal lately. Mm-hmm. He did have like that sellout thing.
Yeah, IMAX all 3 days. Sold out.
Yeah, and that's this weekend coming up.
Right.
It's going to be really weird if that weekend passes and there's nothing that is announced. And he's got Jim Lee involved. Like did like a whole He did like a whole T-shirt design that's to benefit that. I feel like as much as we want a Justice League 2 or 3, James Gunn is friendly with Zack Snyder. I feel like Zack Snyder is like very invested in his Rebel Moon franchise that it just seems to be like growing before the first movie even comes out. I feel like we'll get like a comic book sequel. I think we'll get Zack Snyder's Justice League 2 or 3 in like a comic book, and that will boost the comic book line, and then that'll be benefiting, of course, various charities for suicide prevention. But man, I think I don't think we're gonna get a movie Justice League 2 or 3. I think we'll get at best I believe a Max series. But I'll be honest, like I don't know certain what the future contains at this point. I was very weirded out just to see that there was going to be that Zach was going to get like a whole weekend to show his movies. Like I think when that was first announced, that there was going to be like this full circle thing, and Darkseid, says, or has this announcement or incoming transmission from Darkseid or whatever.
Yeah, reporter.
In order to do that, you've got to have, DC's cooperation, because it's still their movies, Warner Brothers, movies. So that he's got to be able to advertise that. He's got to have their buy-in on that. I don't know. I mean, this is the first time like where I'll say I don't know. My Mastradamus is off on his game today. I mean, if my only option is to throw like throw all the spaghetti at the wall and we'll see what sticks on come Monday.